Lila Brooks had logged over 1,000,000 miles in the cockpit, navigating through storms and clear skies alike. But nothing prepared her for the turbulence she felt in her veins that day. As the lead pilot on Flight 452 to Paris, she moved through the business-class cabin with the precision of a seasoned professional, her uniform crisp and her demeanor unflappable. The hum of the engines provided a steady backdrop to the quiet luxury around her, passengers sipping champagne, lost in their worlds of power and privilege. Lila's sharp eyes scanned the seats during her routine check, ensuring everything was in order before takeoff. But when her gaze landed on seat 4B, her world tilted on its axis. Marcus Vaughn, her billionaire brother-in-law, fed caviar to a woman who was certainly not her sister Elena. For a split second, Lila wondered if the high altitude from her last flight was playing tricks on her mind. Marcus's profile was unmistakable. The chiseled jaw, the custom-tailored suit, the platinum watch that screamed old money. And the woman beside him, Natalia Petrova, with her sleek platinum hair and piercing gaze, leaned into him with an intimacy that spoke of secrets shared over months, perhaps years. Lila's heart pounded like a drum in her chest, but she kept her composure, drawing on the discipline drilled into her during pilot training. She remembered the days when she and Elena were kids in a rundown apartment in Chicago, their mother working double shifts as a nurse to keep food on the table after their father died young. The sisters had faced bullying at school for their skin color and whispers of not belonging in specific spaces. Lila had always been the protector, fighting back with words and fists if needed. Seeing Marcus betray Elena like this, that protective fire ignited anew. She positioned herself discreetly, pretending to adjust an overhead bin, while her phone, hidden in her palm, captured photos and a short video. Marcus's hand rested possessively on Natalia's thigh as he murmured something that made her laugh softly, a sound laced with triumph. Lila strained to listen, her pilot's ear attuned to picking up nuances even over engine noise. "Darling," Natalia purred in her soft Eastern European accent. "When will you make it official? I've waited long enough for you to leave your quiet little wife." Marcus chuckled, low and confident, the laugh of a man who believed he owned the world. "Elena, she's manageable. She handles the home front, smiles at my events, and never asks questions. It's the perfect setup. Why rock the boat when I can have it all?" Lila's grip tightened on the bin door. Manageable. The word hit like a slap, reducing her brilliant sister Elena, a Harvard graduate who had built a life from nothing, to a mere convenience. Elena, who had endured subtle racism in Marcus's elite circles, always stood tall and graceful. Lila flashed back to their childhood, Elena helping Lila with homework under a flickering kitchen light, dreaming of a better life. They had risen above, Lila through aviation school on scholarships, Elena through sheer intellect, marrying into wealth that promised security, but now revealed its poison. As the flight attendants began their service, Lila moved closer under the guise of offering blankets. She overheard more fragments that painted a damning picture. Marcus had been seeing Natalia for over 2 years, funding her lavish lifestyle with apartments in Monaco and jewelry from exclusive designers. As his alibi, he spoke of investor meetings in London, but this Paris trip was pure pleasure. Worse, he discussed dissolving his marriage cleanly, thanks to an ironclad prenup Elena had signed in trust. "The prenup protects everything," Marcus explained to Natalia as he poured more champagne. "Elena will get a settlement, nothing more. She's too trusting, too rooted in her background to fight dirty. Once it's done, we can start fresh with you as my queen." Natalia's eyes sparkled with greed. "And the company? You'll sell it off as planned?" Marcus nodded, his voice dropping. "The deals are in motion. I'll pocket the profits through offshore accounts, leave the investors holding the bag. Non-extradition countries await. Elena won't see it coming. She's focused on charity galas and playing the perfect wife." Lila's blood boiled. Marcus wasn't just cheating, he was orchestrating a full-scale betrayal, using company funds for personal gain and planning to vanish, leaving Elena destitute. She thought of Elena at home, probably preparing a welcome dinner for Marcus's return from his fabricated London trip. oblivious to the web of lies. The flight progressed, and Lila used her position to observe undetected. She noted Natalia's possessive touches and how Marcus twisted his wedding ring as if it were a nuisance. In a moment of carelessness, Marcus left his phone unlocked on the tray table while stepping away. Lila, heart racing, snapped a quick photo of an open email detailing wire transfers to Natalia's accounts. These sums could have lifted entire communities from poverty, like the one she and Elena grew up in. But the real danger came when Marcus returned unexpectedly. As Lila leaned in to clear a glass, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Recognition flickered in his gaze, but she averted hers quickly, her uniform and cap providing just enough camouflage. "Excuse me, sir," she said in her most neutral tone. "Any further requests?" Marcus shook his head, dismissing her as mere staff, his arrogance blinding him to the familiar face. "No, that's all." He turned back to Natalia, whispering plans for their Parisian rendezvous. Lila retreated to the galley, her mind a whirlwind. She had evidence now, photos, videos, overheard confessions. But revealing this to Elena would shatter her world. Yet silence would condemn her to a life of deception. Lila pulled out her phone again, sending herself an encrypted message with the files. The sky had eyes today, belonging to a sister who would burn everything down to protect her blood. As the plane hurtled toward Paris, Lila made her vow. Marcus had underestimated the Brooks sisters, two women forged in adversity, bound by unbreakable loyalty. He thought Elena was a pawn in his game of empires. He had no idea she was about to become the queen who checkmated him. The descent began, but the real fall was starting for Marcus. Back in the cabin, Lila caught one last snippet. Marcus promising Natalia the world once he was free. Free. The word echoed in Lila's mind like a thunderclap. She knew what she had to do. Upon landing, she'd head straight to Elena. The truth, however painful, was the only path to justice. Marcus disembarked with Natalia, his hand on her back, oblivious to the storm brewing. Lila watched them go, her resolve steel hard. The past's shadows had caught up and were about to engulf him whole. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elena Brooks' Manhattan penthouse, casting soft patterns across the polished oak floors. Elena stood in her sleek kitchen, her movements deliberate as she juiced fresh oranges, a ritual she had perfected over 10 years of marriage to Marcus Vaughn. The space was a masterpiece of modern design. Stainless steel appliances, minimalist counters, and a view of the city skyline that screamed wealth. Yet, as she prepared Marcus's favorite breakfast, her mind was elsewhere, haunted by the subtle shifts in his behavior. Late-night calls taken in private, trips abroad that stretched longer each month. Her phone buzzed at 8:15 a.m., Lila's name flashing on the screen. Elena answered on the second ring, her voice warm with sisterly affection. "How was the Paris flight, Lila?" But the urgency in Lila's response cut through the morning calm like a knife. "Elena, we need to talk, in person, now." Elena carefully set down her coffee mug as if sudden movements might unravel her world. She knew that tone, Lila's controlled intensity, the same voice she'd used when their mother was diagnosed with cancer, when they lost their childhood home to foreclosure. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Is it Mom?" "Not over the phone," Lila said. "I'm coming over. Marcus is back tonight from London, right? Please don't call him, don't text, just wait for me." The line went dead. Elena stood frozen, the orange juice glass heavy in her hand. She glanced around the kitchen, at the orchids she replaced weekly, the imported coffee Marcus loved, the life she'd built to please him. A memory surfaced. The first time Marcus brought her to a charity gala, her feeling out of place among the elite, the sting of a guest's comment about her humble roots. She'd buried those slights, convincing herself Marcus saw her as an equal. Now, doubt crept in like a shadow. 25 minutes later, Lila arrived, her pilot's uniform slightly wrinkled from the rush, her eyes burning with purpose. Elena led her to the living room, its neutral tones and modern art starkly contrasting to the storm brewing. "Show me," Elena said, her voice steadier than her racing heart. Lila placed her phone on the glass coffee table, her movements deliberate, like presenting evidence in court. She pressed play, and Marcus's laugh filled the room, rich, confident, the sound Elena once adored. The video showed him feeding caviar to Natalia Petrova, their intimacy undeniable. His arm draped over her shoulders, her platinum hair catching the cabin light, his wedding ring glinting as he touched her. Elena watched silently, her face a mask honed from years of navigating high society scrutiny. The footage ended, but Lila wasn't done. "There's more," she said, her voice low. "They've been together for years, Elena. He's bought her apartments, jewelry, and a whole life. He called you manageable, said you're too trusting to question his trips. He's planning to divorce you, take the company's money, and disappear with her." Elena stood and walked to the window, gazing at the city she'd conquered alongside Marcus. The buildings hadn't changed, but her place in this world had. She thought of their childhood in Chicago, the taunts at school for being black girls in a predominantly white district, the way Lila always shielded her. Elena had fought her battles, earned a Harvard degree, and built a life Marcus once called a fairy tale. Now it felt like a lie. "Did he see you?" she asked, her voice calm despite the earthquake inside her. "No," Lila replied. "To him I was just another uniform, invisible." Elena turned, her eyes no longer soft but calculating. She moved to a locked drawer in her desk, pulling out a leather portfolio. Lila's brows furrowed. "What's that?" "For years I've tracked his finances," Elena said. "Not because I suspected this, but because I wanted to understand his world. Contracts, investments, deals. I learned his empire inside out, thinking it was ours." She opened the portfolio, revealing meticulously organized documents. Bank statements, property deeds, and emails. "He thinks I'm a decoration. He's wrong." Lila leaned forward, stunned. "You've been spying on him?" "Not spying," Elena corrected. "Preparing. I grew up watching Mom budget every penny. I know how to follow money. And now, I know where his secrets are." The sisters sat in silence, the weight of betrayal settling between them. Elena's mind raced, connecting dots. Marcus's dismissive comments about her charity work, the way he'd brush off her questions about late-night meetings, the subtle racism in his social circle she'd ignored for love. A new memory surfaced, Marcus laughing off a colleague's suggestion that Elena join the company board, saying she was better suited for hosting than leading. She pulled out her phone, opening an encrypted tracking app she'd installed on Marcus's device months ago, suspecting nothing but wanting to surprise him with a trip. The app showed his real-time location, Paris, not London. Another lie. Her fingers trembled, not with sadness, but with fury. "He's not just cheating," Lila said, watching her sister. "He's stealing from his company, planning to leave you with nothing. I heard him talk about offshore accounts and non-extradition countries. He's a criminal." Elena nodded, her jaw tight. "Then he's made his biggest mistake." She closed the portfolio with a snap. "Lila, you gave me the truth. Now I'll give him consequences." The front door chimed. Marcus, home early. The sisters exchanged a glance, years of unspoken understanding passing between them. "Remember," Elena whispered, "you didn't show me anything. We're just catching up." Marcus entered, his suit impeccable, arms full of designer shopping bags. "My love," he said, sweeping Elena into an embrace that now felt like a performance. "London was exhausting, but I brought you something special." He handed her a velvet box, diamond earrings, beautiful but hollow. Elena smiled, kissing his cheek with practiced warmth. "They're stunning, Marcus. How were the meetings?" "Profitable," he said, his lies smooth as silk. "Investors loved the expansion plans." "Lila, didn't expect you here. How's the sky treating you?" "Same routes, different faces," Lila replied, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "Just flew to Paris yesterday." Marcus's smile didn't falter, but Elena caught the slight tension in his shoulders. "Paris is beautiful this season," he said smoothly. "I should take Elena soon." "I'd love that," Elena said, meaning it. She'd see Paris, but not with him. As Marcus unpacked his lies about London, Elena studied him, her heart no longer breaking but hardening. Each word revealed his arrogance, his blind spots. Lila left quietly, leaving Elena to her thoughts. That night, as Marcus slept, Elena lay awake, her mind a chessboard. She wasn't the naive girl from Chicago anymore, nor the perfect wife he'd molded. She was a woman who'd survived bias, built a life, and now held the match to burn his empire down. The whispers of betrayal had awakened a warrior, and Marcus would soon learn what happened when you underestimated a Brooks sister. The penthouse was silent at 2 a.m., save for the faint hum of the city beyond its walls. Elena Brooks moved through the darkened halls like a phantom, her bare feet soundless on the hardwood floors Marcus had imported for their aesthetic perfection. Her silk nightgown, chosen by him to suit his tastes, trailed behind her, reminding her how much of her life had been curated to please a man who saw her as an accessory. Tonight, that ended. The revelation of Marcus's betrayal of Natalia Petrova, exposed by Lila on that Paris flight, had ignited a fire in Elena. She wasn't just hunting for truth, she was stalking the destruction of his carefully built empire. Marcus slept deeply in their bedroom, breathing steadily, unburdened by guilt. The irony wasn't lost on Elena. His arrogance and belief that she was manageable were the key to his undoing. She slipped into his study, a room he'd once called their shared space but was truly his sanctuary of secrets. The mahogany desk gleamed under the moonlight filtering through the blinds, and the air smelled faintly of his cologne, a scent she once loved, now tainted by deception. Elena settled into his leather chair, the same one where he'd proposed a decade ago with promises of a shared future. Now, she was here to dismantle that lie. His computer hummed to life, the screen casting a cold glow across her determined face. The password hadn't changed. Elena Forever 2015. A cruel joke, she thought, as she typed it in. The desktop opened, revealing folders organized with the precision of a man juggling multiple lives. Her breath caught as she clicked into a folder labeled Tax Documents. It was a facade, hiding records of a Paris apartment purchased 2 years ago, complete with receipts for luxury furnishings and a dedicated account for upkeep. Natalia's apartment, paid for with money that should have been theirs. Elena's hands moved swiftly, her phone's camera capturing each document. She recalled a gala where Marcus had dismissed her suggestion to invest in community housing, claiming funds were tight. The lie stung deeper now. She dug further, uncovering a web of hidden assets. A ski chalet in Aspen, a Malibu beach house, a Tuscan vineyard, all purchased through shell companies linked to Marcus's personal accounts. Properties she'd never heard of, never visited, despite a decade of marriage to a billionaire. Each file was a stab to her heart, but Elena channeled the pain into focus. She used an encrypted app to back up the photos, ensuring they were safe from prying eyes. Her mother had taught her to protect what mattered, a lesson born from years of scraping by in Chicago's toughest neighborhoods. A deeper folder revealed financial transfers to NP Enterprises, Natalia Petrova's initials. Payments for jewelry, travel, and first-class accommodations stretched back 2 years, confirming Lila's account. But the most damning discovery was Marcus's plan to sell Vaughn Industries to foreign buyers, pocketing profits through offshore accounts while leaving investors and employees with nothing. Emails outlined his escape to a non-extradition country, a new life with Natalia. Elena's pulse raced as she photographed every line, her anger transforming into cold resolve. A sudden creak from the hallway froze her. Marcus stirred in their bedroom, his footsteps heavy as he shuffled toward the bathroom. Elena's heart pounded, but she didn't panic. She locked the computer screen and slipped under the desk, her body pressed against the cool wood. The study door was ajar, and she held her breath as Marcus's silhouette passed by, oblivious to her presence. He muttered something about a meeting, then returned to bed. Elena waited, counting to 60 before emerging, her nerves electric but her focus unbroken. She moved to Marcus's filing cabinet, using a key she'd seen him hide behind a rare book on finance. Inside, one document detailed a tax evasion scheme, funneling profits through fake consulting fees. Another showed partnerships with questionable figures, deals that skirted legal boundaries. Marcus's confidence in his untouchability made him sloppy, and Elena captured it with methodical precision. Her mind flashed to a memory, a company dinner where Marcus had humiliated her. Inside were plans for his company's sale, including a timeline to divorce her within a year, ensuring she'd receive only the prenup's minimum. He's not just leaving me, Elena realized. He's erasing me. She photographed the documents, her hands steady despite the betrayal's weight. As dawn approached, Elena closed the safe and returned everything to its place, her movements as precise as a surgeon's. She slipped back into bed beside Marcus, who slept soundly, unaware that his wife had just mapped his empire's fault lines. Her mind raced, piecing together a strategy. Marcus thought he was playing a solo game, but Elena was rewriting the rules. She recalled Lila's words. This wasn't just about her marriage, but about justice for everyone Marcus had exploited. Lying beside him, Elena felt a shift. She wasn't the trusting wife anymore, nor the girl who'd endured racist slights to fit into his world. She was a hunter, and Marcus was her prey. The documents she'd collected were dynamite, and she knew exactly where to place them. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Elena allowed herself a small smile. Marcus had built his empire on lies, but she would rebuild hers on truth. The night's hunt was over, but the war was beginning. Mahogany paneling lined the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Hudson River, a fitting backdrop for a woman learning to dismantle an empire. To Marcus Vaughn, her husband, Elena was pursuing a charming hobby, taking art history classes to polish her socialite image. In reality, she was earning an MBA in destruction, her every note a weapon aimed at his heart. The professor, a seasoned strategist named Dr. Helen Carter, paced before a whiteboard. In corporate warfare, timing is everything, she said. Elena's transformation began when Lila showed her the video of Marcus's betrayal on that Paris flight. The memory of his words, calling her manageable, burned. But so did the racist slights she'd endured in his world. At a gala years ago, a board member had remarked, "You're so articulate for someone from your background." Marcus had laughed it off, but Elena never forgot. Now, she channeled that pain into learning, studying corporate law, finance, and market manipulation with the intensity she'd once applied to pleasing him. Elena nodded, filing away the strategy. Knowledge was her shield, secrecy her sword. Elena built a network of allies outside class, leveraging her role as Marcus's invisible wife. She met Victoria Langford, CEO of Langford Dynamics and Marcus's fiercest rival, at a museum fundraiser. Victoria, an Asian American woman, shared her own stories of bias in the boardroom, executives dismissing her as too soft, despite her track record. She spent nights in the Columbia Library, poring over securities regulations and forensic accounting texts. Marcus's tax evasion schemes were prosecutable, detailed in the files she'd photographed. She learned how to trace his hidden accounts, each lesson sharpening her plan. A twist came at a charity dinner where Elena sat beside Daniel Whitaker, Marcus's former partner, ousted in a brutal restructuring. Daniel's voice was low as he said, "Your husband plays dirty. He took credit for my deals." He'd grown careless, leaving his phone unlocked, unaware that Elena had installed tracking software months ago, initially to plan surprises. Now it revealed his Paris trips, synced with Natalia's movements. She cross-referenced these with his financial records, building a time. One night she spoke with Sophia Chen, a Vaughn Industries board member, who confided that Marcus propositioned me last year. When I refused, he cut my influence on the board. The revelation, raw with pain, deepened Elena's resolve. Sophia's story wasn't just personal. By the end of her third month at Columbia, Elena had mastered Marcus's weaknesses, his arrogance, reliance on intimidation, and distraction with Natalia. She'd built alliances with Victoria, Daniel, and Sophia, each ready to strike when the time came. As she left class one evening, Dr. Carter stopped her. "You're not here for a degree, are you?" she asked, her eyes sharp. Elena smiled. "I'm here to win a war." Carter nodded, understanding. "Then learn fast. because wars are won before the first shot. Elena walked into the night, the city lights reflecting her resolve. Marcus thought he controlled the board, the company, and her life. But she was no longer the girl from Chicago's shadows, nor the wife he'd molded. She was a scholar of vengeance, and her final exam was approaching. Elena Brooks glided through the boardroom of Vaughn Industries, her presence as unremarkable as the polished coffee tray she carried. She was Marcus Vaughn's perfect wife to the board members, gracious, attentive, invisible. She refilled water glasses and distributed documents with practiced ease, her smile warm but forgettable. Yet beneath this facade, Elena was a predator, observing every glance, every frown, every whispered doubt about her husband's leadership. The evidence she'd uncovered in his study, secret properties, offshore accounts, plans to betray his company, burned in her mind, fueling her silent campaign to dismantle his empire from within. The boardroom, perched 40 floors above Manhattan, was a fortress of power. Sleek glass walls, custom leather chairs, and a view of the financial district that screamed dominance. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his voice commanding as he presented the third quarter results. "Revenue up 12%, he declared, clicking through slides with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Our aggressive expansion is paying dividends." But Elena caught the subtle tension in the room. Board members shifting, eyes narrowing. Marcus's arrogance was fraying their trust. Elena had spent months studying these 12 board members, learning their ambitions and frustrations. A former CEO, Edward Sinclair, had privately criticized Marcus's risky European deals. A brilliant strategist, Sophia Chen, harbored resentment after Marcus sidelined her for rejecting his advances. Elena used her role as the dutiful wife to gather intelligence, planting seeds of doubt with carefully chosen words. Today, she approached Edward with a fresh coffee, her voice soft. "2 sugars, no cream, right? I always notice the details." Edward's eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "You do," he said quietly, "more than most." The exchange was brief, but Elena knew he sensed her awareness, her quiet power. She moved on, her ears tuned to the room's undercurrents. During a break, Elena lingered near the refreshment table, engaging Sophia Chen in casual conversation about a recent charity event. Elena said that Marcus seemed confident about the European expansion, and her tone was concerned. "I worry he's taking on too much." Sophia's smile was tight. "Your husband's optimism is bold, but some question his judgment." Elena nodded, her expression one of wifely worry. "I try to advise caution, but he doesn't always listen." The words were calculated, amplifying Sophia's doubts without implicating herself. Sophia leaned closer, her voice low. "He dismissed my risk assessment last month. He said I was too conservative in his vision." Elena's pulse quickened. She'd struck a nerve. "It's hard when he's so driven," she replied, planting another seed. "Vision needs balance." Sophia's nod confirmed her as an ally. Elena's strategy relied on her invisibility. For years, board members had discussed sensitive matters in her presence, assuming she was merely decorative. Now, she weaponized that oversight, cataloging their grievances. Edward's concerns about cash flow, Sophia's anger at Marcus's misogyny, and younger members' unease with his reckless borrowing. Marcus was losing the room, and he didn't even see it. But danger loomed. Marcus had grown suspicious of Elena's late nights and newfound confidence. One evening, she'd caught him glancing at her phone, his brow furrowed. To counter, Elena had discovered a hidden camera in their living room, likely installed to monitor her. She'd hired a tech consultant from her MBA program to hack the feed, looping footage of her reading art books to maintain her cover. The game was escalating, and she had to stay one step ahead. At a company dinner, Elena sat beside Sarah Mitchell, the head of human resources, a woman who'd seen Marcus's cruelty firsthand. "I worry about Marcus," Elena confided, her tone gentle. "He's so stressed, making decisions alone." Sarah sighed. "We've all noticed. The layoffs last quarter were brutal. Good people escorted out like criminals." Elena feigned shock. Marcus said those were voluntary exits. Sarah's eyes hardened. That's not how it happened. Each conversation added to Elena's arsenal. She never criticized Marcus directly, instead expressing concern that mirrored the board's growing unease. Her brilliance lay in her truthfulness. Marcus was isolated, erratic, cruel. She ensured the right people saw it clearly. At home, Marcus bragged about his control, oblivious to the shifting dynamics. "The board ate up my presentation," he told her over dinner. "Edward Sinclair asked some naive questions, but I shut him down. Elena said you always handle them well," her voice supportive while her mind cataloged his mistake. Dismissing Edward publicly was a misstep, one she'd leverage. Later, she texted Sophia through her burner phone, heard Marcus clashed with Edward, worried he's pushing too hard. Sophia's reply was swift. "He's alienating everyone. We're discussing options." The real twist came when Elena accessed Marcus's email through a backdoor her tech consultant had created. She found a message to his assistant. "Keep an eye on Elena. She's acting differently. Schedule a meeting with our PI." Elena's heart raced. Marcus was hiring a private investigator. She doubled her precautions, using encrypted apps for all communications and routing her research through a VPN. She also planted a decoy, a fake art class schedule emailed to herself, reinforcing her cover. Elena's network grew stronger. Victoria Langford, Marcus's rival, shared market intelligence over lunch, hinting at his failing European deals. Daniel Whitaker, his ousted partner, provided details of Marcus's past frauds. Each ally was a piece in her chess game, and Marcus was a king unaware of the checkmate closing in. One night, as Marcus worked late, Elena received a call from Edward Sinclair. "Mrs. Vaughn, I'd like to discuss the company's direction. Your perspective matters." Elena smiled in the dark. "I'd be happy to meet Edward. I share your concerns about Marcus's stress." The call confirmed her strategy was working. Cracks were forming in Marcus's empire, and she was the wedge. As she prepared for bed, Elena caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the naive bride Marcus had married, nor the girl who'd endured racist taunts in Chicago. She was a force, forged in betrayal, sharpened by knowledge. Marcus thought he controlled the boardroom, but Elena was rewriting the rules. The shadows within Vaughn Industries were shifting, and she was their architect. 5. Shadows Within. Elena Brooks glided through the boardroom of Vaughn Industries, her presence as unremarkable as the polished coffee tray she carried. She was Marcus Vaughn's perfect wife to the board members, gracious, attentive, invisible. She refilled water glasses and distributed documents with practiced ease, her smile warm but forgettable. Yet beneath this facade, Elena was a predator, observing every glance, every frown, every whispered doubt about her husband's leadership. The evidence she'd uncovered in his study, secret properties, offshore accounts, plans to betray his company, burned in her mind, fueling her silent campaign to dismantle his empire from within. The boardroom, perched 40 floors above Manhattan, was a fortress of power. Sleek glass walls, custom leather chairs, and a view of the financial district that screamed dominance. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his voice commanding as he presented the third quarter results. "Revenue up 12%, he declared, clicking through slides with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Our aggressive expansion is paying dividends." But Elena caught the subtle tension in the room, board members shifting, eyes narrowing. Marcus's arrogance was fraying their trust. Elena had spent months studying these 12 board members, learning their ambitions and frustrations. A former CEO, Edward Sinclair, had privately criticized Marcus's risky European deals. A brilliant strategist, Sophia Chen harbored resentment after Marcus sidelined her for rejecting his advances. Elena used her role as the dutiful wife to gather intelligence, planting seeds of doubt with carefully chosen words. Today, she approached Edward with a fresh coffee, her voice soft. "2 sugars, no cream, right? I always notice the details." Edward's eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "You do," he said quietly, "more than most." The exchange was brief, but Elena knew he sensed her awareness, her quiet power. She moved on, her ears tuned to the room's undercurrents. During a break, Elena lingered near the refreshment table, engaging Sophia Chen in casual conversation about a recent charity event. Elena said that Marcus seemed confident about the European expansion, and her tone was concerned. "I worry he's taking on too much." Sophia's smile was tight. "Your husband's optimism is bold, but some question his judgment." Elena nodded, her expression one of wifely worry. "I try to advise caution, but he doesn't always listen." The words were calculated, amplifying Sophia's doubts without implicating herself. Sophia leaned closer, her voice low. "He dismissed my risk assessment last month. He said I was too conservative in his vision." Elena's pulse quickened, she'd struck a nerve. "It's hard when he's so driven," she replied, planting another seed. "Vision needs balance." Sophia's nod confirmed her as an ally. Elena's strategy relied on her invisibility. For years, board members had discussed sensitive matters in her presence, assuming she was merely decorative. Now she weaponized that oversight, cataloging their grievances. Edward's concerns about cash flow, Sophia's anger at Marcus's misogyny, and younger members' unease with his reckless borrowing. Marcus was losing the room, and he didn't even see it. But danger loomed. Marcus had grown suspicious of Elena's late nights and newfound confidence. One evening, she'd caught him glancing at her phone, his brow furrowed. To counter, Elena had discovered a hidden camera in their living room, likely installed to monitor her. She'd hired a tech consultant from her MBA program to hack the feed, looping footage of her reading art books to maintain her cover. The game was escalating, and she had to stay one step ahead. At a company dinner, Elena sat beside Sarah Mitchell, the head of human resources, a woman who'd seen Marcus's cruelty firsthand. "I worry about Marcus," Elena confided, her tone gentle. "He's so stressed, making decisions alone." Sarah sighed. "We've all noticed. The layoffs last quarter were brutal. Good people escorted out like criminals." Elena feigned shock. "Marcus said those were voluntary exits." Sarah's eyes hardened. "That's not how it happened." Each conversation added to Elena's arsenal. She never criticized Marcus directly, instead expressing concern that mirrored the board's growing unease. Her brilliance lay in her truthfulness. Marcus was isolated, erratic, cruel. She ensured the right people saw it clearly. At home, Marcus bragged about his control, oblivious to the shifting dynamics. "The board ate up my presentation," he told her over dinner. "Edward Sinclair asked some naive questions, but I shut him down." Elena said, "You always handle them well," her voice supportive while her mind cataloged his mistake. Dismissing Edward publicly was a misstep, one she'd leverage. Later, she texted Sophia through her burner phone. "Heard Marcus clashed with Edward. Worried he's pushing too hard." Sophia's reply was swift. "He's alienating everyone. We're discussing options." The real twist came when Elena accessed Marcus's email through a backdoor her tech consultant had created. She found a message to his assistant. "Keep an eye on Elena. She's acting differently. Schedule a meeting with our PI." Elena's heart raced. Marcus was hiring a private investigator. She doubled her precautions, using encrypted apps for all communications and routing her research through a VPN. She also planted a decoy, a fake art class schedule emailed to herself, reinforcing her cover. Elena's network grew stronger. Victoria Langford, Marcus's rival, shared market intelligence over lunch, hinting at his failing European deals. Daniel Whitaker, his ousted partner, provided details of Marcus's past frauds. Each ally was a piece in her chess game, and Marcus was a king unaware of the checkmate closing in. One night, as Marcus worked late, Elena received a call from Edward Sinclair. "Mrs. Vaughn, I'd like to discuss the company's direction. Your perspective matters." Elena smiled in the dark. "I'd be happy to meet Edward. I share your concerns about Marcus's stress." The call confirmed her strategy was working. Cracks were forming in Marcus's empire, and she was the wedge. As she prepared for bed, Elena caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the naive bride Marcus had married, nor the girl who'd endured racist taunts in Chicago. She was a force, forged in betrayal, sharpened by knowledge. Marcus thought he controlled the boardroom, but Elena was rewriting the rules. The shadows within Vaughn Industries were shifting, and she was their architect. Elena Brooks sat across from David Kim in his sleek office on the 32nd floor, the Manhattan skyline a glittering backdrop to their clandestine meeting. The corporate lawyer, her former MBA study partner, spread legal documents across his mahogany desk. He said Phoenix Ventures, Aurora Capital, and Meridian Holdings, pointing to the papers. 3 shell companies tied to your personal trust fund are untraceable. Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the fine print with the fluency she'd honed over months of studying Marcus Vaughn's empire. She was no longer just his wife. She was a predator, buying his world out from under him. Her grandmother's inheritance, dismissed by Marcus as insignificant, had grown into a substantial fund through careful investments. He'd never bothered to track her assets, assuming her wealth was a footnote to his billions. That oversight was her weapon. "How many shares can we acquire without alerting Marcus or the board?" she asked, her voice steady. David leaned back, his expression calculating. Under SEC regulations, each shell company can purchase up to 9.9% of Vaughn Industries before triggering disclosure. That's just under 30% total, acquired quietly through multiple brokers over weeks. The key is patience. Spread the buys, avoid patterns. Patience was Elena's strength, a virtue Marcus lacked. His arrogance and distraction with Natalia Petrova closed his eyes to the silent takeover unfolding. Elena had spent weeks gathering intelligence from board members like Edward Sinclair and Sophia Chen, who were increasingly frustrated with Marcus's erratic leadership. She'd also leveraged social media, anonymously leaking vague rumors about Vaughn Industries' financial instability on platforms like X. Enough to nudge stock prices down without raising suspicion. Each dip was an opportunity. Elena implemented her strategy with precision. Phoenix Ventures bought 2,000 shares on a Monday. Aurora Capital acquired 1,500 on Wednesday. And Meridian Holdings snapped up another 1,000 by Friday. To the market, these were unrelated investors taking modest positions. Elena was amassing control, her moves cloaked by VPNs and encrypted transactions. She worked with a trusted broker from her MBA network, ensuring no single purchase drew attention. Her allies proved invaluable. Edward Sinclair now meets her weekly for coffee to discuss company morale and shared boardroom tensions. Marcus's latest projections are unrealistic, he confided one morning. He's leveraging assets too aggressively. Elena nodded, feigning concern. I've tried suggesting caution, but he's so focused. Edward's frown deepened. He's isolating the board. It's dangerous. Victoria Langford, Marcus's rival, provided market intelligence during a lunch at an upscale bistro. My sources say his European deals are crumbling, she said, swirling her wine. Maybe 20% of Vaughn Industries stock will tank when that news breaks. Elena's mind raced, calculating. Should I warn Marcus to pull back? Victoria's smile was sharp. He won't listen. But someone smart could buy shares at a discount soon. Elena seized the opportunity. When Marcus's public boasts about European expansion spooked investors, she directed her shell companies to buy during the dips. Each purchase brought her closer to 31% ownership, enough to sway any board vote combined with her allies. The beauty of her plan was that Marcus's failures funded her ascent. His arrogance drove the stock price down, and she capitalized on every misstep. At home, Marcus remained oblivious, consumed by his affair with Natalia. His frequent Paris trips and late-night calls distracted him. His attention split between romance and risky deals. Elena monitored his movements through her tracking app, noting his latest rendezvous coincided with a board meeting he'd skipped. His absence fueled discontent, and Elena fanned the flames. At a company event, she spoke with Sarah Mitchell, the HR head. Marcus seems so distant lately, she said, her tone worried. I fear he's burning out. Sarah sighed. He's burning us out. The layoffs were his call, not the board's. The real danger came when Marcus's suspicions grew. One evening, he confronted Elena as she studied in their library, her art books a careful cover for legal texts. You're always reading now, he said, his eyes narrowing. What's gotten into you? Elena smiled. Deflecting and just broadening my horizons, darling. I want to keep up with your world. He relaxed, but she knew he was watching. Her tech consultant warned her that Marcus's private investigator was investigating her activities. Elena countered by routing all communications through secure channels, leaving no trace. A twist heightened the stakes. Late one night, Elena accessed Marcus's email through her back door and found a message to his assistant. Strange stock activity in the company. Check for unusual buyers. Her heart skipped. She'd been careful, but Marcus's paranoia grew. She instructed her broker to pause purchases, spreading them across smaller transactions to avoid detection. She also leaked another rumor on X, this time about internal audits, further depressing the stock and masking her moves. Elena's network tightened. Marcus's ousted partner, Daniel Whitaker, shared documents proving past frauds, strengthening her case. Sophia Chen revealed more about Marcus's toxic behavior, including a hushed-up harassment claim. Each piece of intelligence was a brick in Elena's fortress. She met Edward Sinclair again, this time at a discreet cafe. "The board's restless," he said. "Marcus insulted me publicly last week and called me outdated." Elena's eyes softened, but her mind was razor-sharp. "He's under pressure," she said. "Maybe too much." Edward leaned forward. "Some of us are considering a no-confidence vote. It's drastic, but his leadership is reckless." Elena nodded, her pulse quickening. What would it take to succeed? Edward's gaze was steady. Votes and shares. Marcus controls 45% through allies. We'd need a majority. Elena's 31%, combined with Edward's faction, could tip the scales. She didn't reveal her hand, only saying, "I'll talk to Marcus. Maybe he'll listen." She knew he wouldn't. That night, over dinner, Elena tested him. "I've heard board members are worried about the company's direction," she said, pouring wine. Marcus scoffed. "Edward Sinclair's whining again. He's too old for this game. I'll handle the board." His arrogance was her opening. She'd use it to drive the wedge deeper. Elena's final purchases pushed her ownership to 31%. The board was fracturing, employees were demoralized, and Marcus was blind to the storm. She stood at her penthouse window, the city lights reflecting her resolve. The silent acquisition was nearly complete, and Marcus's empire was hers for the taking. The autumn sun rose over Manhattan, bathing Elena Brooks's penthouse in golden light. Marcus Vaughn stirred in their king-sized bed, stretching with the satisfaction of a man who believed his world was perfectly aligned. Today was his 41st birthday, a milestone he expected to celebrate with lavish gifts and adoration. Elena, already awake, moved through their morning routine with the grace of a seasoned performer, her silk robe catching the light as she prepared his coffee. Her face betrayed nothing of the storm she'd orchestrated, which would shatter Marcus's empire by day's end. "Happy birthday, darling," Elena said, leaning down to kiss his forehead with calculated tenderness. "I've planned something unforgettable." Marcus pulled her close, his smile smug. "I hope it's that new rooftop restaurant," he said, his voice thick with entitlement. "And maybe something private later. Just us." Elena's lips curved into a mysterious smile. "You'll remember this day forever," she promised, her words carrying a weight he couldn't sense. Marcus dressed in a tailored Italian suit that cost more than most people's rent and savored his favorite breakfast of Belgian waffles and fresh berries. Elena sat across from him, sipping coffee, her eyes unreadable. "You look radiant today," he observed, scrolling through birthday messages from colleagues and investors. Elena's smile didn't falter. "It's a new beginning," she said, her voice soft but laced with steel. Marcus, oblivious, left for the office in high spirits, kissing her goodbye with casual affection. As the door closed, Elena's demeanor shifted. She retrieved her burner phone from a hidden drawer, sending encrypted messages to her allies: Edward Sinclair, Sophia Chen, and her tech consultant. The Securities and Exchange Commission had been building a case against Marcus for 6 weeks, fueled by the evidence she'd provided: bank records, property deeds, emails detailing his fraud, and plans to sell Vaughn Industries for personal gain. Today, they would strike. At Vaughn Industries headquarters, Marcus stepped off the elevator into chaos. Federal agents in navy suits filled the lobby, their badges glinting with authority. His assistant, Jennifer, met him with wide eyes. "Mr. Vaughn, they have warrants. They're seizing financial records for a fraud investigation." Marcus's confident smile held, but Elena would have recognized the tightening of his jaw. "There's a mistake," he said smoothly. "My lawyers will handle this." The lead agent, Sarah Carter, approached with a warrant in hand. "Marcus Vaughn, we're with the SEC. We're investigating securities fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering." Marcus waved her off, retreating to his office to call his legal team, but his usual allies were unreachable. His phone buzzed relentlessly, investors demanding answers, partners pulling away, board members questioning his leadership. Outside, news trucks gathered, tipped off by Elena's anonymous post on X, framing the investigation as corporate corruption. At noon, Elena arrived elegantly in a tailored black dress, carrying a leather portfolio. Jennifer ushered her in, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Vaughn, he's in a meeting with the agents." Elena nodded, her expression calm. "I need to see him. It's urgent." She stepped into Marcus's office, closing the door behind her. Papers were scattered across his desk, a visual of his crumbling empire. "Happy birthday, Marcus," she said, her voice steady. He looked up, his face a mix of relief and confusion. "Elena, thank God. This is a nightmare. Someone's trying to ruin me." "Yes," Elena said, "someone is." She opened the portfolio on his desk, revealing divorce papers. "I'm filing for dissolution of our marriage on grounds of adultery, fraud, and financial misconduct." Marcus stared, his confidence cracking. "What are you talking about? This isn't the time for games." Elena's gaze was unyielding. "I know about Natalia, the Paris apartment, the hidden accounts, your plan to divorce me and flee with stolen money. I know everything, Marcus. Every lie, every crime, every betrayal. The SEC investigation? I started it 6 weeks ago with the evidence I gathered." His face paled, his mouth opening and closing like a trapped animal. "You did this?" Elena nodded, her voice cold with satisfaction. "You called me manageable. You thought I was too trusting, too rooted in my background to fight. That was your mistake." Marcus's desk phone rang. Jennifer's voice was panicked. "Mr. Vaughn, the board demands an emergency meeting. They're talking about a no-confidence vote." Elena's smile deepened. "That's the second part of your birthday gift." Marcus's eyes widened. "You can't influence the board. I control them." "You don't," Elena said, placing stock ownership records beside the divorce papers. "I own 31% of Vaughn Industries through shell companies. With the board's support and other shareholders, I have the votes to remove you." Marcus's hands trembled as he scanned the documents. "This is impossible. You don't have that kind of money." "My grandmother's trust fund," Elena said, her voice sharp. "You called it pocket change. You never tracked my assets. Your arrogance blinded you." The door burst open, and Agent Carter entered with 2 investigators. "Marcus Vaughn, you're under arrest for securities fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering." As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Marcus's gaze locked on Elena, his voice a mix of shock and betrayal. "You destroyed me." "No," Elena corrected, her tone almost gentle. "You destroyed yourself. I just showed everyone the truth." He was led away, news cameras capturing his humiliation as he stumbled through the lobby. His birthday suit now a symbol of his fall. Elena stood at Marcus's office window, watching the federal vehicle pull away. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with triumph. She thought of her childhood in Chicago, the racist taunts she and Lila endured, the way she'd fought to rise above. Marcus had seen her as a prop, a black woman to be managed, but she'd turned his game against him. The board meeting loomed, and Elena was ready to claim her throne. Marcus's birthday had begun with dreams of power. It ended with powerlessness, and Elena was the architect. The boardroom of Vaughn Industries, perched high above Manhattan, was a crucible of power, its glass walls reflecting the city's relentless ambition. At 4 p.m., 3 hours after Marcus Vaughn's arrest, the 12 board members gathered around the polished conference table, their faces a mix of shock, anger, and cautious anticipation. News of the SEC raid had spread like wildfire, amplified by viral posts on X speculating about corporate fraud. Elena Brooks entered at precisely 4:15, her tailored black suit commanding respect, her presence radiating a quiet authority that silenced the room. She carried a thick folder, her weapon in this final battle to seize control from the man who had underestimated her. Elena sat at the table's foot, not in the gallery where wives were expected to observe, but among the decision-makers. "Gentlemen, ladies," she began, her voice steady, "thank you for convening this emergency session." Edward Sinclair, acting as interim chairman, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Vaughn, we appreciate your concern, but board meetings are only for members and major shareholders." Elena opened her folder, distributing documents with deliberate precision. "As of this morning, I control 31% of Vaughn Industries through Phoenix Ventures, Aurora Capital, and Meridian Holdings, making me the largest shareholder." The room erupted in murmurs, board members poring over the ownership records. Sophia Chen, her eyes wide, spoke first. "Elena, how did you manage this?" "Call me Elena," she said, her tone firm yet gracious. "While Marcus was embezzling funds and betraying this company, I acquired shares at prices deflated by his incompetence. My grandmother's trust fund, carefully invested, gave me the leverage." Edward Sinclair studied the documents, his expression shifting to respect. "This is extraordinary, but stock ownership alone doesn't grant authority to remove Marcus." "It does when combined with shareholder support," Elena countered, standing and moving to the head of the table, where Marcus's chair sat empty. The symbolism was unmistakable. "For 10 years, I've attended these meetings as a silent observer, serving coffee, taking notes, smiling while Marcus made decisions that enriched him at this company's expense. Today, I'm here to change that." Thomas Reed, a loyalist to Marcus, shifted uncomfortably. "Elena, we valued Marcus's leadership. His vision built this company. Did it?" Elena's gaze locked onto Thomas, her voice sharp. "Did you value his embezzlement of funds for personal properties? His manipulation of quarterly reports? He plans to sell Vaughn Industries to foreign buyers and disappear with the profits." The silence was deafening, board members exchanging stunned glances. Elena distributed another set of documents, bank records, property deeds, and emails detailing Marcus's fraud and his affair with Natalia Petrova. As the board reviewed the evidence, their shock turned to disgust. Sophia Chen shook her head. "I knew Marcus was aggressive, but this is criminal." Elena nodded, "which is why the SEC arrested him today, based on evidence I provided over the past 6 weeks." Edward leaned forward, his voice low. "You orchestrated this investigation?" "I supplied the truth," Elena corrected. "Marcus's crimes did the rest." Thomas frowned, his loyalty wavering. "Why not come to us first? We could have handled this internally." Elena's smile was steel beneath silk. "With respect, Thomas, Marcus controlled this board through fear and manipulation. How many of you challenged him successfully? How often did your concerns change his course?" The silence answered her. Elena continued, her voice rising with conviction. "Marcus succeeded because you saw what he wanted, a quiet wife, a supportive shadow. You didn't notice I was learning your business, building alliances with your competitors, and understanding your industry. Diana Ashford warned me of Marcus's failing European deals weeks before they went public. Daniel Whitaker shared his fraudulent accounting practices. Edward, your insights on board dynamics helped me time my stock purchases perfectly." Edward's eyes widened. "You used us. I learned from you," Elena said, her tone unwavering. "There's a difference. You all wanted Marcus gone, but lacked the power. I brought it." Sophia raised her hand. "With Marcus arrested, what now?" "The company needs leadership. Competent leadership," Elena emphasized. "I propose a vote of no confidence in Marcus Vaughn as CEO and chairman, and I nominate myself as interim CEO while we search for permanent leadership." The room fell silent. board members staring at Elena as if seeing her for the first time. Thomas scoffed. "You, CEO? You're Marcus's wife, not a corporate leader." Elena's gaze didn't waver. "I've studied this business for months, its finances, operations, and values. I understand our challenges and opportunities. I believe in transparency, collaboration, and treating employees as humans, not tools. Unlike Marcus, I lead to serve, not exploit." Sophia spoke first. "I move to call a vote of no confidence in Marcus Vaughn." "Seconded," Edward said swiftly. "All in favor?" Elena asked. 11 hands rose, but Thomas hesitated, his face torn. "Marcus built this company," he said. "This feels like betrayal." Elena leaned forward. "Betrayal was Marcus stealing from us, lying to us, and planning to abandon us. Loyalty to him is loyalty to ruin." Thomas sighed, raising his hand. "Motion carries," Elena announced. "Marcus Vaughn is removed from all positions. Regarding my proposal for interim CEO, who will appoint me?" "I do," Sophia said, her voice firm. "Seconded," Edward added. "All in favor?" Again, 11 hands rose, Thomas joining reluctantly after a tense pause. "Motion carries," Elena said, her voice steady despite the triumph surging through her. "I accept the position." As the board filed out to face the waiting media, Edward approached Elena. He said quietly that I've been in business for 40 years and never seen a move like this. You played the game better than Marcus ever did. Elena smiled faintly. He taught me what not to do. Outside, reporters clamored for statements, but inside, Elena stood at the head of the table, the city skyline framing her victory. Marcus's badge was deactivated. Her name was already being etched on the CEO's door. The boardroom battle was won, but the war for justice was far from over. The courtroom in downtown Manhattan buzzed with the low hum of anticipation, a space where polished wood panels and stern portraits of judges past seemed to hold their breath. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the gallery filled with reporters, curious onlookers, and a smattering of Vaughn Enterprises executives who had once fawned over Marcus Vaughn, but now averted their eyes. Elena Brooks sat in the witness box, her posture straight as a blade, her dark suit tailored to perfection, a subtle nod to the power she had claimed. Her skin glowed under the fluorescent lights, a testament to the unyielding strength she had forged from years of being underestimated. Across the room, Marcus Vaughn slouched in the defendant's chair, his once impeccable suit rumpled, his salt and pepper hair disheveled. The man who had built an empire on charm and cunning now looked like a cornered animal, his eyes darting with a mix of fury and desperation. Judge Harlan Whitaker, a no-nonsense veteran known for cutting through corporate smokescreens, banged his gavel to silence the murmurs. Daniel Whitaker, Marcus's former partner and Elena's quiet ally, sat in the front row, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. The trial had begun 2 days prior, but today marked the heart of it, Elena's testimony. The charges were a litany of white-collar sins, securities fraud, embezzlement, insider trading, all woven from the threads of evidence she and Lila had painstakingly gathered. Marcus had siphoned millions from Vaughn Enterprises into offshore accounts, funneled through shell companies tied to his lover, Natalia Petrova. What had started as a personal betrayal had unraveled into a corporate catastrophe threatening to topple the very board Elena now steered. Elena adjusted the microphone, her voice steady as she began. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I stand here not as a victim, but as a survivor. Marcus Vaughn didn't just betray his marriage, he betrayed everyone who trusted him with their livelihoods." She paused, letting the words settle like stones in still water. The jury, a diverse panel reflecting the city's mosaic, 2 black women, an Asian man, a Latino father of 3, leaned forward, their expressions a blend of skepticism and intrigue. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Carla Ruiz, nodded encouragingly. "Ms. Brooks, please walk us through the discovery of the fraudulent transactions." Elena exhaled slowly, her mind flashing to that night in Marcus's office, the glow of his computer screen illuminating ledgers of deceit. It started with inconsistencies in the quarterly reports. As CEO, I had access to the full financials after the board's emergency vote. I found transfers totaling over $47 million to an entity called Petrova Holdings, Natalia Petrova's front. Marcus had been using company funds to finance her lavish lifestyle and, worse, to manipulate stock prices ahead of mergers. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Marcus shifted, his lawyer, a slick attorney named Reginald Hale, objecting furiously. "Objection, Your Honor. Speculation." Sustained, Judge Whitaker intoned, but his eyes lingered on Elena, a flicker of approval in them. "Stick to the documents, Ms. Brooks." She nodded, pulling up the digital exhibits on the courtroom screen. Screenshots of encrypted emails, wire transfer confirmations, even a damning voice recording from Lila's flight over Paris. In it, Marcus's voice slithered through the speakers. "Elena's manageable, always has been. Once the divorce is final, we'll liquidate her shares quietly. Petrova's the future. Exotic, compliant, no baggage from the streets." The jury winced collectively. Elena felt a pang in her chest, not of hurt, but of the old fire reigniting. She had once believed his words were love, a ladder out of the poverty that had gripped her childhood in Brooklyn's shadowed corners. Her mother, scrubbing floors until her hands cracked, had drilled resilience into them. "Skin like ours doesn't bend easily, girls. We break chains." Elena had climbed that ladder, only to find it rigged. "These transactions weren't isolated," she continued, her tone measured yet laced with steel. "They coincided with the hostile takeover attempts on Whitaker Industries. Marcus shorted their stock using insider tips from Daniel Whitaker's former dealings, then bought low. It's classic pump and dump, dressed up in boardroom finery. Daniel Whitaker met her gaze from the gallery, a silent thank you passing between them. He had lost everything to Marcus years ago, but Elena's evidence revived his restitution claim. The prosecutor's assistant wheeled in a cart of physical binders, each tabbed with color-coded proof. Falsified audits signed by Edward Sinclair under duress. Sophia Chen's coerced emails recanting her harassment complaints. Sophia sat nearby, her almond-shaped eyes fierce, having testified earlier about Marcus's advances. Hands lingering too long in conference rooms, whispers promising promotions for silence. The hashtag #MeToo thread had woven the personal into the professional, exposing how Marcus preyed on vulnerabilities, especially those of women who looked like Elena or Sophia, whose ambitions were dismissed as diversity hires. As Elena delved deeper, painting the picture of a man who viewed his empire as a personal fiefdom, Marcus's facade cracked. He leaned forward, his voice a hiss across the room. "Lies. She's twisting everything because I left her. Order." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. But the damage was done. The jury's eyes turned colder toward the defendant. Recess came like a brief storm's pause. Elena stepped into the corridor, where Lila waited. Her pilot's uniform was traded for a simple blouse and slacks, and her locks pulled back in a practical bun. The sisters embraced fiercely, Lila's whisper hot against Elena's ear. "You're carving him up like a bad root. Proud of you, sis." Elena pulled back, her smile tight. "It's not over. Hale's got tricks." And tricks there were. When the court resumed, the defense called a surprise witness, a forensic accountant planted by Marcus, claiming the transfers were legitimate consulting fees for Natalia's market research. But Elena had anticipated this. Ruiz countered with Interpol alerts. Natalia Petrova, the ethereal Slav beauty with a trail of forged passports, had fled to Moscow days after the birthday raid. Flight manifest shows her on a private jet paid for by Vaughn Enterprises, Ruiz declared, flashing a grainy photo of Natalia at Sheremetyevo Airport, her fur coat starkly contrasting to the grim Russian winter. The courtroom erupted as the screen lit up with the image. Marcus bolted upright, color draining from his face. "That bitch," he muttered, loud enough for the microphone to catch it. Hale scrambled to contain the outburst, but Judge Whitaker's glare was lethal. "Mr. Vaughn, one more disruption, and you'll watch this from a cell." Elena watched Marcus's desperation bloom into something darker. Whispers from her security detail, loyal ex-military hired post-appointment, confirmed it. Late-night calls from the jail, bribes funneled to a bailiff's cousin. Marcus was trying to buy the judge, dangling promises of board seats in a post-trial Vaughn resurgence. It was audacious even for him, but Elena had eyes everywhere. Her tech team, bolstered by Victoria Langford's Silicon Valley contacts, had intercepted the communications. That evening, as the city lights twinkled beyond her penthouse window, once Marcus's, now hers, Elena paced the marble floors. Lila lounged on the couch, nursing a glass of bourbon. "You gonna leak it?" Elena's fingers flew across her phone, drafting the anonymous post to a cadre of financial influencers on X. No direct names, just enough. Whispers from the Vaughn trial, defendant shopping for justice like it's Black Friday. Check the wires. Attached are redacted call logs and timestamps, glowing like accusations. She hit send, the digital die-cast. By morning, the storm broke. CNBC led with Vaughn corruption deepens, bribery allegations rock trial. Stock tickers for Vaughn Enterprises plummeted another 8%, wiping out billions in market cap. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, signs bobbing, "Justice for the Overlooked," and "No more kings in suits." Inside, the air crackled as the court reconvened. Judge Whitaker's face was thunderous, his voice booming. "Counsel, approach the bench." Now. Hale stammered excuses, but the damage was irreparable. The judge declared a mistrial on the bribery count, too tainted, but folded it into the fraud charges, fast-tracking the jury's deliberations. Elena took the stand one last time for rebuttal, her words a crescendo. Marcus Vaughn built his throne on the backs of those he deemed lesser. Women like me, immigrants like Sophia, partners like Daniel. But thrones made of lies crumble. I didn't come from the projects to manage his mess, I came to lead. The jury filed out at noon, returning by dusk. The foreman, a middle-aged black woman with a nurse's badge pinned to her lapel, stood. "On all counts of fraud and embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty." Cheers erupted, quickly stifled by the gavel. Marcus slumped, Hale's hand on his shoulder a futile anchor. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks. 20 years minimum, asset forfeiture that would leave him penniless. Elena met his gaze across the divide. No triumph in her eyes, only resolve. He mouthed something, regret? Rage? But she turned away, linking arms with Lila as they exited into the flashing cameras. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain on pavement. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrusting like spears. "Ms. Brooks, how does it feel to win?" She paused, the city skyline a jagged crown behind her. "It's not about winning. It's about rewriting the rules so no one else has to fight this war alone." Her voice carried, amplified by the feeds going live. In that moment, Elena Brooks wasn't just the CEO or the ex-wife. She was the reckoning, the woman who had turned shadows into spotlights. As the sisters slipped into the waiting car, Lila squeezed her hand. "One down. The empire's yours now." Elena nodded, watching the courthouse recede in the rearview. But victory tasted bittersweet. The scars of bias lingered, a reminder that justice was a battle won, not a war ended. Natalia still awaited extradition, and Marcus's allies lurked in the wings. Yet for the first time, Elena felt the weight lift. Not gone, but shared. She was ready for the glory ahead, crown or no crown. 6 months after the verdict, the glass towers of Vaughn Enterprises gleamed under the relentless New York sun, a monument to reinvention. Elena Brooks stood at the head of the executive boardroom, her fingers tracing the edge of a sleek conference table that had once witnessed Marcus Vaughn's manipulations. Now, it hosts strategies for growth, not greed. The room hummed with quiet efficiency, screens flickering with real-time data streams, analysts tapping furiously on tablets. Edward Sinclair and Sophia Chen flanked her, their faces etched with the fresh lines of loyalty earned through fire. Victoria Langford joined via holographic link from London, her sharp features softened by a rare smile. Reinstated as a senior advisor, Daniel Whitaker nodded from the far end, his presence a bridge to the past they were burying. Elena cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the air like a well-sharpened blade. Profit margins had climbed 15% in the last quarter, a feat analysts attributed to her overhaul of ethical sourcing policies. No more shadowy deals with overseas suppliers who cut corners on labor rights. Instead, Von Enterprises pivoted to transparent chains, partnering with fair trade cooperatives in Africa and Southeast Asia. The stock, battered during the trial, had rebounded, cresting above pre-scandal highs. But Elena knew numbers told only half the story. The real empire she built rose from the ashes of exclusion, a fortress where voices like hers, once silenced, now commanded. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her gaze sweeping the room, "we are not just recovering. We are redefining. Today, I announce the launch of the Brooks Initiative, a program dedicated to elevating women of color in business. Scholarships for MBAs, mentorship networks spanning continents, and venture capital funds seeded with $10 million from our reserves. We will fund startups led by those who have been overlooked, turning barriers into blueprints." Applause rippled, genuine and warm. Sophia Chen leaned forward, her eyes alight. "This is revolutionary, Elena. I wish I'd had something like this when I started clawing my way up against the glass ceilings they pretend don't exist for women like us." Victoria Langford's hologram flickered as she raised a virtual glass to empires built on equity, not exploitation. "Count me in for the European arm. I'll bring my contacts from the city." The meeting flowed into action items, timelines etched in digital ink. Elena felt the weight of it all, not as a burden, but as a mantle she had tailored to fit. Back in her corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Hudson River like a living painting, she sank into her chair. The space had been stripped of Marcus's ostentatious touches. No more crystal decanters or leather-bound ledgers hiding secrets. Now, potted ferns from a Brooklyn nursery softened the edges, and a framed photo of her and Lila, arms linked on a windswept tarmac, anchored the desk. Lila had flown in that morning from her latest route, Paris to JFK, dropping a care package of croissants and conspiracy theories about the trial's lingering ghosts. "You look like you own the world, sis," Lila had said over coffee, her pilot's cap tilted jauntily. "But don't forget to breathe. Empires eat their builders if you're not careful." Elena smiled at the memory, but the door buzzed, pulling her back. Her assistant, a young woman named Aisha with a hijab framing her determined face, entered with a sealed envelope. "Ma'am, this arrived via courier. No return address, but it's from Rikers. Priority." Elena's pulse quickened, though she schooled her features to calm. She thanked Aisha and waited until the door clicked shut before slitting the seal. The paper inside was cheap, prison issue, Marcus's handwriting a jagged scrawl that clawed across the page. "Elena, you think you've won. That courtroom circus was just the opening act. I have friends you haven't dreamed of, strings pulling from shadows deeper than your little vendetta. The board isn't yours yet. Not truly. Watch your back. One whisper from me and your precious initiative crumbles under scrutiny. You're still the girl from the projects, playing dress-up in my suit. Burn this, or frame it, your choice. Marcus." The words landed like embers, singeing the edges of her resolve. She had anticipated threats, of course. Security had tripled since sentencing, ex-FBI consultants sweeping her homes and offices for bugs, drivers vetted like candidates for the Secret Service. But reading his venom in ink made it visceral, a reminder that victory was not a complete stop, but a vigilant pause. Marcus Vaughn rotted in a cell, his appeals denied, his assets frozen in a web of liens that left him scraping for commissary cash. Yet his mind, that serpent's coil, still slithered free. She folded the letter precisely, slipping it into her drawer beside the divorce decree and the key to the company vault. No tears this time, no fracture in her armor. Instead, she activated her secure line to the security chief, Reyes, a burly woman with scars from cartel busts. "Double the sweeps on the board members," Elena said, her tone even, "and pull the visitor logs from Rikers. I want names, dates, everything." "On it, boss." Reyes paused. "You good?" "Better than him. Make it airtight." Hanging up, Elena turned to her computer, diving into the Brooks Initiative files. The program was her counterstrike, not just against Marcus, but against the systemic rot he embodied. She had pored over data from McKinsey reports and Harvard studies, confirming what her gut knew. women of color founded businesses at twice the rate of their white counterparts, yet received less than 1% of venture funding. Her initiative aimed to flip that script, starting with a pilot in Harlem where single mothers like her own had bootstrapped dreams on bare necessities. By afternoon's end, she had greenlit the first cohort, 20 women, from coders in Oakland to textile artists in Accra. Their stories flooded her inbox, raw and radiant, tales of bias in boardrooms and bootstraps tied with baling wire. One applicant, a biotech whiz from Lagos, wrote of being passed over for promotions because her accent was too thick and her skin was too dark. Elena forwarded it to Sophia for vetting, adding a note, "She reminds me of us. Make it happen." As dusk painted the skyline in bruised purples, Lila arrived unannounced, her duffel slung over one shoulder. "Rough day in the clouds?" Elena asked, rising to hug her. Lila dropped the bag, scanning the room with a pilot's eye for turbulence, more like I smelled trouble from 30,000 feet. Aisha spilled about the letter. "Want me to fly you out? Disappear to some island till he chokes on his own bile?" Elena laughed, a sound like breaking glass, sharp and freeing. Tempting, but no. This is my fight now. Besides, the initiative's launch gala is tomorrow. Can't miss my own coronation. They settled on the couch, takeout from a soul food spot in Bed-Stuy steaming between them. Lila recounted her latest flight drama, a passenger meltdown over turbulence that mirrored Marcus's tantrums. Elena shared boardroom wins, as Edward Sinclair had championed her ethics audit, confessing his regrets over signing those falsified reports. Over collards and cornbread, the sisters dissected the threat's subtext. Marcus's allies, perhaps holdouts in the old guard or Petrova's shadowy network. Natalia Petrova, extradited at last, awaited her own trial in a federal holdover, her pleas for immunity traded for scraps of intel that had already fortified Elena's case. But the letter gnawed, a personal barb amid the corporate chess. That night, alone in her bed, Elena traced the scars of their marriage, invisible but insistent. She remembered the early days, Marcus sweeping her from cramped apartments to champagne toasts, whispering promises that masked his calculations. He'd say, "You're my exotic muse," as if her heritage were a prop, not a power. The bias had been subtle then, a pat on the head for the diversity checkbox, until it sharpened into dismissal. "You handle the charity galas, leave the real deals to me." Now she channeled that dismissal into drive. Sleep came fitfully, dreams of falling skies morphing into boardrooms where faces blurred into Marcus's sneer. Dawn broke with resolve, and by 9, she was in motion. The gala that evening transformed the company's atrium into a constellation of lights, chandeliers dripping like molten gold. 300 guests swirled in tailored finery. Philanthropists, CEOs, activists with placards tucked away for the night. Elena, in a gown of midnight silk that hugged her like a second skin, took the stage amid thunderous applause. "Thank you," she said, her voice amplified, carrying the weight of every woman who had been told her ambition was too much. The Brooks Initiative is not a charity. It is justice delayed, now delivered. We invest in the leaders the world tried to erase. Black women, Latina innovators, indigenous visionaries. Together we build not just companies, but communities that lift all. The crowd roared, cameras flashing like stars. In person, Victoria Langford slipped her a flute of champagne backstage. "You're a force, Elena. He never stood a chance." But as the night waned, Elena's phone vibrated with an alert from Reyes. Anomalous access attempt on the initiative database, traced to a VPN in Eastern Europe. Petrova's ghost. Elena tightened her grip on the glass, the bubble of triumph sharpening to vigilance. Marcus's letter had been a feint, a spark to ignite old fears. But she had built firewalls, literal and figurative. Calling Lila, who was nursing a nightcap in the hotel bar, she outlined the breach. "Lock it down," Lila said, "and tomorrow we audit the allies. No one slips through." Hanging up, Elena stepped onto the balcony, the city sprawl a tapestry of lights below. Vaughn Enterprises is pulsing with new life, profits soaring on ethical wings, and the initiative is a beacon drawing talent from margins to the center. Marcus's threats were echoes, fading against her symphony. Yet the tension lingered, a taut string humming with possibility. She had the empire, the crown forged in betrayal's forge. But empires demanded guardians, and Elena Brooks, once manageable, now unyielding, stood ready. She whispered to the wind quietly, "Your shadows don't scare me anymore. They light my way." The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria shimmered under crystal chandeliers, a sea of tuxedos and gowns swirling like stars in a midnight sky. Elena Brooks glided through the crowd, her emerald gown catching the light with every step. A cascade of silk whispered of quiet power. It had been 9 months since the trial's gavel fell, and Vaughn Enterprises stood taller than ever, its ethical reforms rippling through supply chains from Harlem to Hanoi. The Brooks Initiative had funded its first wave of startups, birthing apps for maternal health in underserved communities, and sustainable fashion lines woven by artisans in Senegal. Invitations to galas like this one poured in, but tonight felt different. Forbes had named her one of the most powerful women in business, a title that once seemed like a consolation prize for trailblazers who shattered ceilings only to be commended for the debris. Lila Brooks waited near the podium, her sister's shadow in a tailored pantsuit, locks swept into an elegant updo. She clutched 2 flutes of champagne, handing one over with a wink. "You clean up nice for a corporate warrior. Remember, if anyone asks about the ex, say he's redecorating his cell." Elena accepted the glass, her laugh low and genuine. The sisters had grown inseparable in the rebuild. Lila's layovers syncing with board meetings, their late-night calls dissecting threats like flight plans. Marcus's letters had tapered to silence, his appeals exhausted in federal courts, but Natalia's shadow lingered. Extradited and charged with conspiracy, she awaited trial in a Manhattan detention center. Her Slav beauty faded behind orange jumpsuits. Legal circles whispered about a plea deal that might drag Elena back to the stand. Yet here, amid the clink of glasses and murmurs of admiration, Elena allowed herself a breath of unburdened air. The MC, a silver-haired anchorwoman with a voice like velvet thunder, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next honoree has not merely climbed the ladder of success. She has dismantled it, rebuilding it as a bridge for those left behind. From the boardrooms of betrayal to the forefront of empowerment, please welcome Elena Brooks." Applause cascaded as Elena ascended the steps, the spotlight warm on her skin, a glow that chased away the chill of old wounds. She paused at the podium, scanning the sea of faces. Sophia Chen beaming from a front table, her harassment suit against Vaughn Enterprises settled out of court with a foundation in her name. Victoria Langford, fresh from a TED Talk on Asian women in tech, nodding fiercely. Daniel Whitaker, his restitution claim yielding a partnership that mended old fractures. Even Edward Sinclair clapped with vigor, his redemption arc etched in the ethics code he now enforced. Elena set her notes aside, speaking from the heart, her voice steady and resonant. "Thank you. This award belongs not to me, but to every woman who has been told her voice is too loud, her skin too dark, her ambition too foreign. I stand here as a daughter of Brooklyn, raised by a mother whose hands bore the calluses of endless shifts, who taught us that resilience is not endurance, but eruption. We erupt against the biases that label us as tokens, not titans." The room leaned in, a collective hush broken only by the rustle of programs. Elena wove her story with threads of raw truth, no varnish. "I married into power, believing it would shield me from the streets that shaped me. Instead, it exposed the fractures, the subtle slights in strategy sessions, the assumptions that my insights were flavored by flavor, not forged in fire. Marcus Vaughn saw me as manageable, a checkbox for diversity. But manageability is a cage, and I broke free not with rage alone, but with revelation. We, the women of color in these rooms and beyond, carry histories of erasure, from enslaved ancestors to immigrant dreams deferred. Yet we lead, we innovate, we demand space not as guests, but as architects. Her words ignited sparks, A young Latina executive wiped tears, her phone capturing every syllable for social feeds. Sophia Chen rose first in a standing ovation, the crowd surging to join her. Elena stepped back, the weight of the crystal award light in her hands, but its symbolism heavy as a legacy. Offstage, Lila enveloped her in a hug, whispering fierce pride. "You just rewrote their dictionaries, sis. Powerful isn't a word anymore. It's you." The after-party unfolded in the hotel's gilded lounge, jazz notes curling through cigar smoke and laughter. Elena circulated with grace, fielding congratulations laced with curiosity. A cluster of venture capitalists cornered her by the bar, probing the initiative's ROI. She parried with data, early investments yielding 30% returns, startups scaling to employ hundreds in marginalized zip codes. One man, a hedge fund titan with a Rolex glinting like accusation, leaned in. "Impressive pivot from the scandal. How do you sleep knowing half the street still whispers about Vaughn's fall?" Elena met his gaze, unflinching. "I sleep soundly, sir, because I built something he could never touch. Trust." Whispers fade, legacies endure. He chuckled, retreating into his scotch, but the exchange left a faint ripple. Lila appeared at her elbow, steering her toward a quieter alcove. "You handled that like a pro, but eyes on the door, feels like a whole house tonight." Elena's security detail, Reyes and her team, melted into the periphery, earpieces humming with scans. The gala drew power players, opportunists, and ghosts from the trial, eager for redemption or revenge. As Elena sipped sparkling water, a stir rippled through the entrance. Heads turned, murmurs swelling like a gathering storm. Natalia Petrova. She swept in like a specter from a forgotten reel, her blonde waves loose and defiant, a crimson dress clinging like a second skin. Bail had been granted that morning, a technicality in her case, her lawyers spinning tales of coerced confessions. Flanked by a burly attorney and a photographer trailing like a shadow, she moved with the poise of someone who thrived on spectacle. The room parted, a mix of gasps and guarded stares. Forbes had courted controversy by not barring her, framing it as journalistic neutrality. But Elena saw the trap: drama for clicks, vulnerability for sport. Natalia locked eyes across the lounge, her lips curving in a smile sharp as shattered glass. She navigated the crowd with predatory elegance, bypassing admirers to halt before Elena. The air thickened, conversations stuttering to a halt. "Elena Brooks," Natalia purred, her accent a silken blade, laced with Moscow chill, or should I say, Mrs. Vaughn no more. "Congratulations on your little trophy. It suits you, playing the victim turned victor." Lila tensed beside Elena, hand inching toward her clutch. But Elena raised a palm, calm as a captain in crosswinds. "Natalia, I did not expect an uninvited guest. Enjoy the evening. The bar is open." Natalia laughed, a sound like tinkling ice, drawing more eyes. "Oh, I will. But first, a word. You testify against me next month, yes? Painting me as the scheming mistress, the foreign temptress who stole your prince. How poetic. But truth is messier. Marcus chose me because you bored him. Your causes, color-coded audits, endless lectures on equity. I gave him fire without the lectures." The lounge hushed, phones emerging like fireflies, capturing the clash. Sophia Chen edged closer, Victoria Langford's text buzzing in Elena's pocket. "Need backup," Reyes murmured into her comms, positioning subtly. Elena stepped forward, voice low but carrying, a velvet thunder of her own. "Boredom was his excuse, Natalia, not my truth. You were his mirror, reflecting the vanity he craved. But mirrors crack, and while you chase headlines, I build horizons. Testify, I will speak facts, the accounts you laundered, the lies you whispered in Paris skies. But tonight, this is my light. Yours waits in a courtroom, dim and unforgiving." Natalia's facade flickered, eyes narrowing to slits. "You think you're untouchable now. The world loves a redemption arc, but one slip, Elena, they'll devour you. The black girl from the projects is overreaching. They always do." The words hung, venomous, but Elena felt no sting, only pity laced with steel. She leaned in, Voice a confidential murmur that microphones strain to catch. Then let them try. I have risen from worse than whispers. And you have fallen from the grace you never earned. Security materialized then. Reyes guiding Natalia back with polite firmness, her attorney sputtering protests. The photographer snapped furiously, but Elena turned away, reclaiming her space amid the resuming chatter. Lila exhaled, squeezing her arm. That was ice cold. You okay? Elena nodded, the adrenaline a familiar hum. More than okay, she handed me the stage. And stage it was. Whispers turned to awe, the incident fueling toasts rather than takedowns. Victoria Langford pulled her into a huddle, dissecting the drama with lawyerly glee. Shell regrets that. Public confrontations play poorly in pleas. By midnight, as guests drifted into limos, Elena slipped onto the terrace, the city sprawl a glittering testament below. Lila joined her and the cool night air was a balm. You owned that room, sis, from bias to boss, spotlight and all. Elena leaned on the railing, the award tucked under her arm like a talisman. It's not the end, Lila. Natalia's trial, Marcus's echoes. But tonight, it's proof. We don't just survive, we shine. The sisters stood shoulder to shoulder, the skyline their witness, as laughter echoed from within. Elena Brooks, once shadowed, now the light, ready for whatever dawn brought. 1 year after the gala confrontation, the penthouse atop Vaughn Enterprises pulsed with the quiet rhythm of a life reclaimed. Elena Brooks stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline sprawling below like a conquered kingdom, its lights etching promises into the velvet dusk. The city had cooled into autumn, leaves skittering across Central Park like forgotten confetti from her coronation. Vaughn Enterprises thrived under her stewardship, quarterly reports gleaming with 25% growth. The Brooks Initiative a global force now, its scholarships blooming into board seats and billion-dollar valuations. Women she had lifted, from Lagos coders to... She carried the scent of jet fuel and jasmine tea, her locks braided with silver threads that caught the lamplight. Sisters, she called, wrapping Elena in an embrace that smelled of home. You called this summit, spill. Is it another threat from the tomb or just wine and wisdom? Elena pulled back, her smile a crescent moon, guiding Lila to the terrace where a table waited, crystal glasses, a decanter of aged bourbon, and a platter of plantain chips dusted with sea salt, a little of both. Marcus's last gasp came yesterday, but first, dinner. No war stories on an empty stomach. They settled into wicker chairs and the city hummed a distant lullaby. Lila poured generously, clinking glasses. To crowns that don't rust, and to sisters who forged them. As plates emptied, Elena unfolded the narrative like a long folded map. The year had been a forge, hammering her edges sharp. Natalia's trial had wrapped in spring, a swift conviction on money laundering. Her sentence, a decade in a low-security facility upstate. The plea deal crumbled under cross-examination. Elena's testimony a scalpel, dissecting the Paris whispers and Petrova Holdings ledgers. Natalia had glared from the stand, her defiance cracking into sobs. But Elena felt no schadenfreude, only closure, a door bolted against the past. The board had solidified, Edward Sinclair retiring with honors, his seat filled by a rising star from the initiative, a queer indigenous economist whose models predicted market shifts with eerie precision. Sophia Chen led the harassment task force, and her foundation partnered with Vaughn for nationwide training, turning scars into standards. Victoria Langford's European expansion funneled green tech back to New York, and Daniel Whitaker's restitution fueled joint ventures that healed old wounds with profit. But Marcus Vaughn's shadow lingered longest, a specter Elena had watched fade. Lila's eyes softened, her hand covering Elena's across the table. About time. You carried that guilt like extra baggage. And him? Forgiveness for the snake? Elena shook her head, gaze drifting to the Empire State Building's spire, a needle piercing the night. Never. He chose betrayal as breath, bias as blueprint. I owe him nothing but the peace of my indifference. His ruin is his mirror, reflecting the empire he torched for a spark. Lila nodded, her pilot's pragmatism threading the moment. Remember Ma's stories? The ones about great Aunt Josie, who walked out of sharecropping fields with nothing but a Bible and a backbone, built a salon that outlasted Jim Crow? Their mother, hands raw from night shifts at the hospital, would gather them on the fire escape, stars winking through smog. Skin like polished ebony, she would say, tracing their cheeks. It doesn't crack under pressure, it shines. Elena had internalized it as survival, but Elena rose, gliding inside the console, thumb hovering before pressing accept. The screen flickered to life, not video, just audio, a tinny echo from a monitored booth. Elena? Marcus's voice, frayed as worn denim, slithered through. She could picture him, gaunt cheeks, prison pallor, the once commanding timbre reduced to a plea. What do you want? Elena's tone was glacial. Old times? You mean the ones where you called me manageable, a prop for your diversity delusion? Where did you funnel our life into her pockets while I built your facade? His breath hitched, a rasp of desperation. Damn, sis, that was queen shit. Back on the terrace, the bourbon refilled, they toasted again, this time to endings that birthed beginnings. Elena shared the initiative's latest triumph, a cohort graduate, a trans-Filipina engineer whose solar grid lit villages in Mindanao, her TEDx talk going viral with millions inspired. Lila countered with cockpit confessions, how flying solo routes mirrored Elena's solo reign, both navigating storms with instruments of instinct. As midnight crept, the city below a galaxy of ambition, Elena rose, leaning on the railing. The wind tugged her curls, carrying whispers of what was and what would be. Marcus's call was his final arrow, blunted on her shield. She forgave the girl who loved him, the wife who endured, but him? He remained a lesson, not a haunt. Inner power, Ma's legacy, pulsed in her veins, unyielding, radiant. Lila joined her, shoulder to shoulder, the sisters' silhouettes merging against the glow. What's next? Lila asked, eyes on the horizon.